Ia Ora Na ia oto paatoa I te imhana, maruru no te wharereira. Maruru me te ia Polylingual conference no te whar ima ia ui te imhana. O Moenau to ui oa no Tahiti mai au I Polynesia frani. Ovo te whaatere o te tai te Polylingual Reo Tahiti, e oro me tua haap I au. E haap I au te Reo Tahiti, nani ai te natirara. Te hinaro nei au e whaate atu ia oto paatoa, te tapa no te aroha. Bonjour à tous, tout d'abord un grand merci à Polylingual Conference de m'avoir accueilli et de m'avoir donné le privilège de partager avec vous mon histoire et mon expérience. Je m'appelle Moenau, je viens de Tahiti, une petite île qui se trouve en Polynésie française, dans le sud du Pacifique. J'enseigne la langue tahitienne pour les débutants en ligne et je suis la cofondatrice de l'agence Poly-lingual.com, une plateforme en ligne qui offre des cours de langue du Pacifique Sud. Hello everyone, I'd like to thank the Polyglot Conference team for inviting me to this year's edition. I will share my presentation in English, which is my third language. My name is Moenau Rivera and I am from Tahiti, a small island in the South Pacific Ocean. I am Tahitian, French, and now an American citizen. I was born and raised on the island of Tahiti and I currently live in Southern California in the United States. Thank you Polyglot Conference for allowing me to share my story and my experience with the world. When I moved here in the United States, many people would ask me, what are you doing here? You left Tahiti, one of the most beautiful islands of the South Pacific, to live here in the crazy city of Los Angeles? It doesn't make sense. And I simply answered, well, leaving Tahiti has actually made me more Tahitian. My answer usually leaves a lot of people confused. So let me share with you what I mean by that. First, allow me to set the scene by bringing you into my world. It will allow you to experience my story through my eyes. I was born and raised in Tahiti, a small island located in the South Pacific. It is a French territory and is part of a larger French Polynesia. French Polynesia contains about 118 islands, of which Tahiti is the main and biggest island. Tahiti is known as a luxury destination, known not only for its overwater bungalows and turquoise blue lagoon, but also for its amazing and authentic culture. And our traditional dance called the Ia Tahiti, it is a popular type of dance that is practiced all over the world, even in places that I will never have thought it would be. Every year during the month of July, we hold a huge festival called the Heva, where the entire population of French Polynesia gathers together to celebrate its own culture through dance, language, sports, arts, and crafts. There are plenty of events to attend during that time and a wealth of knowledge to be had. Knowledge is passed down at these events, not through a classroom setting, but through real life expressions and experiences. The dance portion of these festivities is an opportunity to experience the native Tahitian language through dance, musical, and oratory performances. It is time for us Tahitians to admire our native Reo Tahiti, the Tahitian language, and to observe its perpetuation. For myself, French is my first language due to Tahiti being a French territory and French being the official national language in French Polynesia. However, I speak three languages fluently: French, Tahitian, and English. I am currently learning the Maori language and hope to be fluent one day. I learned French at home, at school, everywhere, and every day. However, something interesting to note is that we Tahitian people have our own accent. We do not speak French like French speakers from France. We roll our R's a bit more like the Spanish R, and we speak much, much slower. It is actually easier for people to learn French from us Tahitians, in my opinion. If you ever had the chance to travel to Tahiti, the main island, you will realize that most people speak French there. However, if you go on the other side of the island of Tahiti, you're more likely to see more people speaking the Tahitian language. And if you travel to the other islands of French Polynesia, Tahitian is definitely more widely spoken. The further you distance yourself from the mainland, Tahiti, the less French you will hear. And I love the people that live in the outer islands, and I appreciate that they speak such a true and pure form of the Tahitian language. I learned English at school as it was mandatory in our curriculum in junior high and high school. Our English program was more focused on grammar and writing, not so much on speaking. I was an excellent student in English class, but I couldn't hold a conversation in English. It was very difficult. I was terrible, all due to the lack of practice. It wasn't until I moved here in the United States that I became 100% fluent in English. My husband is American, so naturally helped me improve my English. I watched a lot of TV my first year, so I could better understand the American accent and also increase my vocabulary. I continue to improve my English speaking even today, as there is always room for progress. As for learning Tahitian, it proved to be quite challenging for me, believe it or not. My entire family is bilingual. Everyone speaks French and Tahitian, except for my great-grandmother, who I remember was the only one speaking solely in Tahitian. She didn't know any words in French. I was lucky to spend a lot of time with her in my childhood and grew up by her side. I was exposed to and learned the Tahitian language from her. She gave me a perfect understanding of the language, but I didn't begin to speak the language until my adult years. I spoke a mixture of French and Tahitian only. That is very common and what most people do in Tahiti. In my family, Tahitian was only spoken between adults. Our parents never spoke or taught us the language. I learned Tahitian by listening only. This is probably why I didn't fully speak the language until way later. That was my experience learning Tahitian at home. Learning Tahitian at school was even more challenging. Back in the day, things were very different. Tahitian was not encouraged at all. I remember in high school, I was very fond of the language and I was passionate about learning about my culture, but I was discouraged from taking Tahitian courses. It is sad to say. I remember my counselor telling me that the Tahitian language is dead, is a dead language and had no future. I was pretty much forced to learn another language like Spanish, Mandarin, German, but for some reason Tahitian was the language I wanted to learn. To me, it was important to learn the language so I could understand my culture and make my family proud. So I insisted on taking the Tahitian courses and was able to do so after all. Obviously, I realized that the Tahitian language was believed to be a non-important language. Sadly, many Tahitian people take this language for granted. It's shameful and embarrassing to see. I completely disagree with that way of thinking. I see the value of this language. I do. I see how precious it is. The Tahitian language is what we are, is what makes us unique. It tells the stories of the past. It is a gift, a heritage from our ancestors. It is what differentiates us from the world. It is part of our identity. And if we let go of this, we will lose a big part of our identity as the Tahitian people, as the Maohi people. Today, a lot of people in French Polynesia do not know how to speak Tahitian, especially the younger generations. Tahitian is still well spoken in French Polynesia, but mostly the older generation is fluent. However, things are changing now because there is a movement happening where people are starting to be more and more aware of the danger of the disappearance of the language. They realize that we cannot count on our elders speaking of the language to be the sole vehicle of the perpetuation. We have to learn to speak the language ourselves. That is the only way we can keep it alive. When our elders will be gone, the language will also disappear if we do not do our part and take action. When I moved to the United States, it was difficult to leave everybody behind me. My family, my friends, and my life on the island. I was living in paradise, yes, but I decided to move here in the United States right after I got married, as I knew there was something much bigger in store for me. My husband Steve is American but shares a huge passion for Polynesian culture. He has traveled to the islands of Tahiti many times. He even lived there for a period of time. He was a former Polynesian dancer, and today he continues as a Polynesian dance choreographer here in the United States. He tried for many years to learn Tahitian. It was a challenge for him because it is difficult to find resources to learn the language. Most resources are in French, so he made the effort to learn French first so that he could in turn learn Tahitian. When we got married, I was so excited to share my language and culture with him. I saw his interest and felt how much my husband was passionate about learning Tahitian. It was at that time that I decided to really focus seriously on learning even more about the Tahitian language and Tahitian culture. Back then, I knew only the basics of the language, but it was absolutely essential for me to learn more, to speak more, and to converse more in Tahitian. My husband and I spent a lot of time writing songs in Tahitian, writing conversational scenarios. We did a lot of work together focused on Tahitian language and culture. Eventually, more and more people around us became interested in what we were doing. We started to get requests for translations, language courses, and things quickly got a bit crazy. Then I became a mother of my two daughters. I felt the responsibility of teaching them everything about our culture and language to them. So I started teaching them French and Tahitian at home. I started by exposing them to Tahitian food. Then I began teaching them songs, traditions, and cultural practices. Anything we could transmit to them was a priority to me. We would travel back and forth to the islands of Tahiti every year so my kids could not only spend time with my family and my friends, but also immerse themselves in the culture that is theirs. So to me, this was absolutely important. Today, my daughters are involved in Tahitian dancing and playing Tahitian traditional instruments with a professional Polynesian dance group here in the United States. And even cooking Tahitian food at home, which is amazing. So as it was, my family became my first students. It is challenging, honestly, when a family of 4 is learning and speaking 3 languages at home, English, French, and Tahitian. You better find some creative ways to make the learning experience fun and easy. Otherwise, it can be frustrating sometimes. While focusing on learning about Tahitian culture and language at home, my husband and I started to expand our knowledge in other languages and cultures of the South Pacific, especially the islands of the Polynesian Triangle. All islands of Polynesia have wonderful and amazing cultures, and their languages are even more beautiful. Most languages of Polynesia are considered as endangered languages for many reasons. They are in danger of disappearing if we don't learn, speak, and share them. Since this has been the primary source of transmission for these languages since their creation. Speaking has been the most essential part of this equation, as it ensured the survival of the Polynesian languages. Most were not written down, as was the case with the Tahitian language, until their eventual colonization, when outsiders were the catalyst for the written form. The languages of Polynesia have a lot of similarities, so much so that we can almost understand each other. We share many words in common. So let me share with you some examples. Let's take the word for house. In Tahitian, we say whare. In Maori, we also say whare, just written differently. In Hawaiian, we say hale. In Samoan and Tongan, we say fale. And in Rarotongan, a language from the Cook Islands, we say ari. As for French Polynesia, it is the same case. The 118 islands of French Polynesia are separated into 5 groups of islands, and each group of islands has its own language. The Tahitian language is the official language in French Polynesia. After French, we call the Tahitian language the Reo Tahiti. This is the main language spoken in the Society Islands, and it is a language I learned growing up. Other groups of islands have their own language. In the Marquesas Islands, we have the Marquesan language. In the Tuamotu Islands, they speak the Paumotu language. In the Austral Islands, they speak the Austral language. And in the Gambier Islands, they speak the Mangarevan language. Between the 5 different languages, there are also lots of similarities. Let's take the same example using the word for house. For house, in Tahitian and Paumotu language, we say whare. For house in Marquesan language, we say whae or hae. And for house in the Austral language and the Mangarevan language, we say ari. See the similarities? We can also observe different accents between the 5 groups of islands. There are no specific dialects recognized except for the Austral language, where we can find some existing dialects. Our passion for the languages and culture of the South Pacific Islands is growing more and more, and we have had the chance to travel to most of these islands, but not all yet. We are planning to organize a family cultural trip tour to all these islands soon. The idea being to learn and connect with the people from Polynesia. It is so much better to learn by immersion. You get a much better understanding of not only the language, but cultural implications and context of each language, its people, and its transformation from where it began to what it is today. Today, my family and I have a big mission. It is to share what we know from all that we have learned about the Tahitian culture and language. But we will not stop there. Sharing the islands of Polynesia to the world has become a real passion for us, especially the language aspect. And so this is our focus and goal. We surround ourselves with native speakers from Tahiti, Aotearoa, New Zealand, from Fiji, and soon from Samoa and Tonga, so we can learn more about their languages and culture. And we will definitely be sharing our journey with the world. Everything we do is focused on bringing the language and culture to the world through digital space. We share a lot of free content online through avenues such as YouTube, Instagram, and websites. We also organize online and offline events. We bring the islands to the world and hope in the end the world will have eyes on these small islands and discover how beautiful and unique the cultures of these islands of Polynesia are. The journey of life that has brought me so far away physically from my island home has made me realize how important my culture is. It has made me realize how beautiful our islands are and how authentic our traditions are. If I had never left the island, I would have probably never realized how blue our lagoons are, how clear our water is, how warm the people of Tahiti are, how magical our valleys and rivers and waterfalls are. Living in Tahiti, I took things for granted. But looking from the outside, I see how wonderful my home, my Tahiti, is. Living in the United States away from my birthplace pushed me to become an ambassador of my culture. It pushed me to speak Tahitian, to teach Tahitian, to share my culture. There is an expression in Tahiti that says, Ahi oto mo'a. Mo'a means mountain. Hi'o means to look. If I translate the sentence literally, it means look at your mountain. This Tahitian expression basically means that wherever you are, whatever you do, with whomever you are, do not forget where you come from. Do not forget the people behind you. Do not forget your ancestors. Do not forget your home. Bring it with you. Carry it with you. Because it is part of you. This mountain we're talking about is your home, your identity. And we should be proud of this home, of this identity. In Tahitian culture, we hold many values like pride, family, community, power, unity, friendship, among many more. These values are to be carried with you forever. In life, we constantly make decisions, whether they are good or not. At the end of the day, what matters is that you do not forget who you are and where you come from. I hope my presentation today, it will inspire you to learn more about the islands of Polynesia, especially Tahiti, my home, my people, my whenua. I hope it will inspire you to constantly look forward to learning about Polynesian culture. Learning other people's culture and language will change you. It will help you understand them better, and it will allow you to be open-minded. This is my invitation to you today. If I can help you discover and learn about Tahiti or the islands of Polynesia, my family and I are pleased to welcome you on our journey. Near or far, my island, my identity, where I call home, is always with me. Whether you're a native trying to learn or reconnect with your roots, or a passionate of the islands, it is possible to learn and appreciate the Polynesian culture, Polynesian traditions, history, and languages. All you need is the desire. Take me, an island girl in one of the biggest cities in the world, and I've never been closer to home than I am now. While distance has separated me from my island Tahiti, it has also made me more Tahitian. Maururu meit e ia oto no te whārur ame, ia meit e oto I te iemhana, ia nui te aroha e amuri no atu, maururu parhei.